Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the level of bad storytelling that is involved with Captain Marvel's character in this Marvel Cinematic Universe. Top to bottom, from her very conception in this universe, this is legendary bad storytelling. And it's such a shock to have this level of poor storytelling and poor planning to come from Kevin Feige and the MCU, which has previously just cornered the market on amazing storytelling. I've spoken so many times and mentioned in so many videos how Kevin Feige has just pioneered the way to tell a good story in a cinematic universe, a shared cinematic universe. You have different levels of that storytelling. You have to tell a good film on its own. You have to have a good, well-developed story there with a character arc and so forth. And then if that film is going to be part of a trilogy, or have a sequel or something like that, within that longer story arc of those three films, that has to be a well-developed character arc as well. And then even beyond that, if that character is going to go on to exist in other films with team-ups or guesting in other people's films in the shared universe, their arc has to continue. Their arc has to continue, and it has to be believable, and it has to be coherent and cohesive. And Kevin Feige has overseen just an amazing universe with so many characters who developed in so many different ways, even beyond their own films. We can track good, solid character progressions from every character. Black Widow has been amazing. She hasn't even had her own film, but you can even see it in Iron Man and Captain America, Thor, and so forth. So for this video, first I want to talk about one of the problems with Captain Marvel in the shared cinematic universe of Marvel. Then I want to talk about her own film and how her own film is just a train wreck when it comes to structure and character development. And then I'm going to go back again to the concept of Captain Marvel and how it's turning the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe on its head and actually betraying all the good storytelling that's been told there. So the first point here is that Captain Marvel, coming into the universe at this point, it's introducing a vitally important character in the last chapter of a novel. That's what it's doing. Now, the argument against this is, oh, no, it's not. This is the transitional character because now we're going into the next phase and we're closing out this first major book or volume of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Endgame will be that end, and we need a character to transition across. No, you don't. There are plenty of characters already in the Marvel Cinematic Universe who are going to go on into that next phase. We know that Black Panther, that Spider-Man, that I believe Scarlet Witch, and all these characters are going to move on, and they're going to be major parts of the next phase. We already have transitional characters. And if Marvel has yet to set up a main character, they want to kind of take on the Iron Man role of pioneering, and leading the universe or whatever, well, that's their problem. Now is not the time to go back in and retroactively try and retool that in. And that's what they're doing with Captain Marvel. I'll get to the specifics of that in just a moment. But in this final movie, before the final chapter of this whole Marvel Cinematic Universe as we know it, suddenly they introduce this character and they're trying to convince us that she's vitally important and she'll play a vital role in wrapping it all up or whatever. And even people are saying, hey, give it a chance. Maybe she won't be so important or vital, in Endgame. Then if she's not, that's still bad storytelling, because what the hell is she doing there? You can't just introduce a character and just have her kind of wave at the audience, now and then, move on to the next book or whatever. That's not proper story structure. And I'm going to come back to the specifics of that in a second. But in order to bridge that and to make it clear, I wanted to look at Captain Marvel's film specifically. The main problem from a storytelling perspective with Captain Marvel is that there's no hero's journey in this story. Now, plenty of people try to pretend that the hero's journey is not vital, it's not important, it's dated, whatever. These are usually people with that intersectional feminist agenda, and they want to say, oh, that's just a tool of the patriarchy, we need to develop beyond that, and blah, blah, blah. And these people do. They are very much trying to subvert that story. We've seen it with Rian Johnson's Last Jedi. We see it with this Captain Marvel. We see it in a bunch of different ways. And I'm still going to put out a video solely on that subject, the hero's journey versus the feminist journey, because they're two very different things. But I've seen plenty of people on the internet try to argue that Captain Marvel does contain the monomyth. It does contain a hero's journey. And what movie are you talking about? It's no coincidence that these people who say that don't give any specifics or any actual reasoning or logic for it. They just want to throw that out there and insist upon it and move on. but it does not contain the hero's journey. Now, it starts to. It starts with the structure that looks like it will contain the hero's journey. If you start watching the film, and when you talk about the hero's journey, there's so many different stages and levels. Of course, Joseph Campbell created so many of his own in A Hero with a Thousand Faces, and all of the comparative mythologists that have come after him have tweaked that a little bit, or changed up the list, or added, or subtracted, or whatever. But there still is a basic outlining structure of the hero's journey that is very important. So we're just going to hit some of those big points here. So when you start watching Captain Marvel, the film, any film should start with the hero in their status quo, their ordinary world. And we have Veers, as she's called at this point, there as a Kree warrior. Okay, fine. And then there's a call to adventure. There's a call to adventure that takes them outside of that ordinary world, takes them into a special world, takes them into something else. They have to cross that threshold and whatnot. Veers doesn't have a call to adventure. She goes on a mission. A mission, just like any other mission she's ever been on, she goes on a mission. Now, the argument might be that, well, these flashbacks she's having about her past that she can't remember, that's her call to adventure. Okay, if you want to argue that, she does not start having these flashbacks at any point in the film. These are things that she's had as long as she's been a Kree warrior. She's been having these flashbacks. This is something she's long had to deal with. There's no moment within this movie when suddenly she receives her call to adventure. This is not the tale. The tale that they are encapsulating from the beginning to the end of Captain Marvel is not the tale of her hero's journey, because there's no call to adventure. That's just something, if you want to argue that it's her flashbacks, well, that's just happened before. And it's pretty weak as far as a call to adventure, if that's what you're really arguing for, because it's not calling her to do anything. It's just some mystery she can't figure out. Moving on, a hero's journey needs to feature a mentor. A mentor who tries to push the hero to be better, tells them they are meant for greater things, or there's more to them than they realize. And as you're watching Captain Marvel in the beginning there, Jan-Rog, Jude Law's character, is absolutely situated in that mentor role. He's her trainer. He's helping her try to not be so ruled by her emotions. And in all of this, he is absolutely situated in the mentor role. The film progresses. Now, at some point, there's the approach, and then there is the ordeal. This is a matter of pacing as the hero's growing closer to the climax of the movie and to finalizing and processing and defeating the villain and taking care of all that needs to be taken care of. There's a pacing. You should achieve little victories and then run into problems and obstacles, and that pacing, that tension should grow. Captain Marvel, what does Carol Danvers run into? She doesn't run into any obstacles. She realizes that her existence as she believes it is a lie. She realizes that she's actually amazing, that she actually has amazing power. There's one point where they capture her and they force her to go commune with the almighty, whatever, the Annette Bening's character there again, the Kree presence. But that's hardly a fight. That's hardly an obstacle. She just realizes how amazing she is and overcomes it. And then in every fight from that point on, there's never any question. There's never any moment where the audience thinks, wow, is the hero going to get through this? I don't know what's going to happen. Of course, we know the hero's going to get through it because we know the hero's journey. But in that moment, in that suspension of disbelief, we need to feel engaged. We need to feel intrigued by the tension and wondering, is the hero actually going to make it out of this? We never feel that in the Captain Marvel film because she is amazing. That's what the movie's about. The movie's about just discovering how amazing she is. That's it. And then the actual mentor, of course, Jude Law's character, Jan-Rog, is not her mentor. We find out that he was actually just the man keeping her down, right? He was the tool of the Kree military, trying to keep her subdued, her real power limited with the regulator on her neck, trying to convince her that she was something she's not, trying to sell her on this false war, this false aggression. Again, just major stand-ins for patriarchy, the idea of patriarchy that feminists like to push. So there's no mentor, there's no approach, no ordeal. Then at the end of the hero's journey, they are supposed to return, ideally to their status quo, or at least to a world where they were meant to be anyway, return with a boon, something that they have achieved in this journey, an elixir, a boon, whatever the comparative mythologist wants to call it, but some special knowledge, some special gift, some special power that they've earned that they can now go back and help their home world, help their home, help their status quo with this new power that they've gained. We don't see that in Captain Marvel. She goes off to help the Skrulls find a home world. That portion of her story, the MCU is trying to save for Endgame. So this shows you how much she is going to be involved in Endgame, because that's that important, vitally important part of a hero's journey. They're trying to save that to be tacked on to Endgame, which is supposed to ideally be the culminating chapter of all of these characters and the amazing journey over 10 years that we followed them. They want to smush Captain Marvel's return in there as well. That's poor storytelling. So we don't have a hero's journey. We have her jammed into this universe. And now I want to talk about how the movie Captain Marvel, they've tried consciously to subvert the hero's journey. They're also consciously subverting Captain America's place in the MCU. And if you don't believe me, just bear with me and look at the evidence. I mentioned in the rewatch the other night that we did of Captain America, the First Avenger, that Captain America is not shown to develop, from Steve Rogers into Captain America. He's not shown to develop alongside Johann Schmidt, alongside the Red Skull's development into the Red Skull. That's something that usually happens in heroes' origin stories. They usually develop into a hero, and then you usually have it paced alongside seeing the villain develop into the villain. And the idea is that, heroes are raised up for times when they're needed, such as these, with the villains coming into forefront. But no, Johann Schmidt is already the Red Skull at the beginning of Captain America First Avenger. So what does Steve Rogers develop into Captain America alongside of? He develops into Captain America alongside the development of the Tesseract into a weapon used by villains, into a weapon that threatens Earth. This is the first time that an Infinity Stone is harnessed by a villain and its power is used against Earth, against humanity. That's what Captain America is raised up to combat. And he does so very well. He takes care of the issue, and the Tesseract is captured and given back to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s hands in the end, or the strategic science, whatever, that becomes S.H.I.E.L.D. That's important. That's vitally important, because the Infinity Stones are really the villains of the MCU. Even though the MCU has given us some great villains, the major critique they have is, their villains aren't really, as prominent as some other films or whatever. And that's because it's the Infinity Stones themselves. It's that ultimate power that the heroes are constantly having to fight against, whether it's located within a villain or whether it's located within themselves and their drive for power, like Tony Stark and Ultron or whatever. So Captain America, as the first of the Marvel heroes to develop in order to fight the misuse of the Tesseract, that situates him absolutely as the first Avenger. And the film is tailor-made for that. We see the musical theme of Captain America is even what Alan Silvestri uses the basis for the Avengers theme. We know that he's the oldest of the heroes, so that everybody knows what heroism was, handed down from those World War II days, and that is what inspires them. And in the modern days, when they're actually putting together the Avengers, that's what certainly inspired Coulson. Coulson tells Captain Rogers that, hey, we might need a little old-fashioned now. With everything that's going on, we need to return to that great inspiration you gave us. We need to return to that old-fashioned. And Captain America becomes the leader of the Avengers, because he and his heroism is the inspiration for the heroism and the leading of what the Avengers go on to achieve. That's Captain America. It's not Iron Man. Iron Man is the first film, and Iron Man's an incredibly important character, but Captain America is the first Avenger. That's very, very clear. Now look at how how the film Captain Marvel is Kevin Feige and the MCU trying to go in and trying to rewrite that, trying to retcon that nonsense and make it Carol Danvers instead, who is the inspiration for the Avengers, and she is the spirit, and she is the one who's most important and shall be taking it over. Carol Danvers receives her power from what? From the Tesseract. There's this whole story that really doesn't fit the timeline about Marvel, the gender swap Marvel, coming in and taking the Tesseract. Somehow she's just given the Tesseract. This alien somehow passes for a human in the military, blood tests and all or whatever. And she's able to just take the Tesseract. And then the Tesseract is placed on her orbiting lab or around the planet for how many years, whatever. This is something pretty new. I mean, you could technically kind of work it into the history of the Tesseract, but it's really poor storytelling, and it's a hole in the universe's storytelling altogether that, this major thing, we just happen to have never heard about it before. So they take the Tesseract out of the original timeline there. They allow it to be the origin for Carol Danvers' powers. So they're saying, hey, that thing that Captain America had to rise up and fight against, well, we're just going to have Carol Danvers receive her powers from it. That's how awesome she is. That was done very much on purpose. And then the whole nonsense about Nick Fury suddenly wanting to put together this Protectors Initiative because of his run-in with Carol Danvers, and then deciding to name it the Avengers Initiative after her call sign on her plane or whatever there. That is a change at the last minute. That's going in and saying everything you thought you knew, everything you've invested in these over 10 years of storytelling, we're going to hurry up and rewrite that real quick at the end because we want to take it in a different direction. That's poor storytelling. That's really shoddy writing. This would never pass in just a basic writing workshop. And yet the Marvel Cinematic Universe is pulling it off because of a feminist agenda. They even throw in Ronan there, and Ronan has no role in the Captain Marvel movie. His only role is to show up at the end so that you can see him cower when he's faced with Carol Danvers, so that then you can just, again, show how amazing she is. Because the film universe has already set up how powerful Ronan was. We know that from Guardians of the Galaxy. You don't mess with that guy. And they just had to trot him out at the end there real quick to have him turn tail and run from Captain Marvel. Again, just to kind of cheerlead her and show how amazing she is, but then also try to put her into the cosmic realm of the universe as well. See, she's always been, important in the cosmic realm as well. Any high school creative writing student can see this is poor writing. You don't do this when you have a solid complete story and you're at the end. You can't just start introducing new characters and have them be important. We already have characters that are going to transition over into the next phase. If they were insisting on making Captain Marvel being the real face of the next phase of the MCU, then she should have came along after Endgame. That's proper storytelling. That's proper structure. And these other transitional characters that we already have should be the ones to greet her and so on. But that's not what we're going to have. We're going to have her forced into Endgame, and we're going to have all of the heroes and all of the characters that we've had time to invest in and that have organically developed before us into amazing characters. We're going to have them fall at her feet and talk about how amazing she is. So it's just really a mind-blowing, sad moment when Kevin Feige, this man who's just been an amazing pillar of great storytelling in the MCU, this wonderful example of it, is just rolling over and falling into all of these errors just for the sake of a political agenda, just for the sake of we have to have an intersectional feminist icon now. And not now, not later, but now. So she can piggyback on the investment that we've already developed by these organic characters. And that's what they're wanting to do. They're wanting to have her piggyback and sort of, receive some of that investment by association. And it's not working. That's very, very clear from people's reactions to her. Kevin Feige's statement after that Comic-Con when he introduced her talking about, oh, this is a sign of how audiences are just going to embrace Brie Larson. How'd that work out for you, buddy? And I've got news for you. It's going to work out even less as time progresses and you continue to shove this propaganda piece down our throats. So that's all for now. I'll be back with reviews, live streams, and more. Thanks for liking, subscribing, sharing the video, and until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories you love. Thanks for watching. Do you like comics that are unafraid to portray women as feminine and men as masculine? Do you enjoy being entertained rather than preached to? If so, then you'll love my own graphic novel currently on Indiegogo. Tales from the Stacks is an anthology series in the vein of The Twilight Zone or Tales from the Crypt. It contains 3 uncanny tales to thrill and haunt you long after reading. With interior art by Dave T. and variant covers by John Malin, Kyle Ritter, and Kyung Lee, you have lots of options to choose from. You can find the link in the description below or search Indiegogo for Tales from the Stacks, and tell the comic industry you don't have to settle for their social agenda platforming. Thanks. And last but not least, don't forget that your Professor Geek now has a merch store. Check out the current options from t-shirts to magnets to the iconic Professor Geek coffee mug, and let me know if you'd like to see something else. The link is in the description, or you can go to cafepress.com/ProfessorGeek.